So I'm not entirely sure when I first heard this term bucket list, but I do know it was way before the 2007 movie titled Bucket List. For any of you who remember, it starred Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman. And the film was directed and produced by Rob Reiner. And I am sorry to say I cannot remember who the writer was. I just remember he was British. In the film, both characters were terminally ill, and they were living on a cancer ward. Morgan Freeman played Carter Chambers, and he'd been a car mechanic before he had cancer. And Jack Nicholson played a billionaire, Edward Cole. They were tired of being treated like they were old and sick, so they plotted and they escaped from the cancer ward. And they went off to have adventures before they died or before they kicked the bucket. So hence the title Bucket List. The movie, I remember at the time, inspired a fair amount of conversation about what we would put on a bucket list. And honestly, I think I was just too distracted at the time to really appreciate it. I didn't pause and take any time to think about it, but I did hear other people talking about it. So the bucket list might sound like a topic for older people, but it isn't just for older people. It's for everybody in the here and now. Because death touches us all. We are all living in finite time. Whether we really spend much of our brain energy considering that or not, it's true. So it's about developing more mindfulness for how we live our current lives. That is the way the bucket list can serve us. So I think that means that regardless of your age, start thinking about the things you want to do and say and experience and be during the next 20, 40, 80 years of your life. Those are the years you have left on this gorgeous planet. So today, I just want to talk a little bit about how to create that mindfulness around what you want to do or what you want to become. And we're going to start with a little creative time. So if you have an order of service, take out the pink piece of paper. I am just realizing the flaw in this plan. You're not all going to have an order of service. Some of you are sharing. Okay. So I'm going to give you a minute or two. I want you to jot down 3 things on that piece of paper that you want to do. This is the beginning of your bucket list. You don't need to rank them, just come up with 3, and you're not going to share them, so these can be your personal things you want to do in the next 5, 10, 60 years. Can be next week, can be a long ways away. And there's pencils in the chair in front of you. It's okay to keep writing, but now that you've had a chance to write down a few things, I want to share with you a poem from Colorado's poet laureate, Andrea Gibson. Andrea needs us to have a small introduction, and after the poem, I'm going to ask you to write a little bit more. So she says, throughout my life, I've heard friends talk about their bucket lists. They want to kite surf in Peru, bungee jump in Bali, have coffee with Dolly Parton in a roadside diner in Tennessee, all of which sound amazing. But my personal bucket list has looked a little different. As much as I love traversing the world outside, healing my inner world has been most of what I've longed to do. So today's sweet community, I share my bucket list. And thus starts the poem. To wear my heart on my sleeve and never grow out of that shirt. To understand how much my attention is worth to another. To communicate with the dead before they die. To listen to the spirit beneath everyone's mind. To think like an inventor. To refuse to be a product of a thought assembly line. To weed my garden until only truth blooms. To see people as mystery, especially those I know best. To be what Mary Oliver called a bride married to amazement, and to not file for divorce from amazement when life gets hard. To know exactly what parts of me are comforted by other people's approval, and learn to comfort those parts for myself instead. To have a spirit so strong I can own every instance when I have been the hater, the bully, or the tongue sharp. To live in a bungalow of kindness. To know every leaf, every river, every sunrise is a child saying, "Watch me, watch me." To repeatedly meet the euphoria of being thankful in moments I am told that gratitude is impossible. To make sure everyone I love knows how much I love them. And to deny that in no part of my life, the word life, even when it feels like life's antithesis. So I want you all to take a moment and add something to your list, now that you've heard Andrea's bucket list. Add at least one thing. And this isn't something you're going to do physically, it's something you want to grow into. So Andrea's poem created a change in my thinking because I've been contemplating this sermon for several weeks, and then I ran across her poem and I went, aha, I've been missing something. I started, after I read the poem, then I added to my bucket list, cultivating a garden of patience was the first thing I added. Around the same time, I was reading Instructions for Learning How to Sketch by Danny Gregory, because I don't sketch. I'm terrible with the pencil, but it doesn't stop me. Actually, I thought the book was about how to sketch, but it was really about how to incorporate experiences and how you're going to hang on to them a little bit. So Danny Gregory mentioned the belief that when he was talking about when someone knows they are dying, they develop this heightened awareness that their days are becoming less, and they begin to develop a deeper appreciation of small things. Small things grow in intensity, and they become special, and they become very precious. the view from the window, or just a casual conversation you had with someone last week. And his point is, don't wait for that later in your life. Do it right now. Whatever your age, whatever your decade, start now with the practice of incorporating finding things, finding experiences, and have them be intense and precious in the here and now. He does this by drawing. He just makes sketches of various things like what's on his plate for breakfast. And I am a terrible sketcher, but I didn't let that stop me. So then I started sketching too, as a way to just memorialize the moment. So I also ran around in my research about the bucket list. I was like, I had developed an entire full attention deficit problem with the material. I would go here and I would go here and then I'd go back here and then I'd go over here. And it was such a lovely process. It was like making a collage. So I went to the Zen Habits website, and the advice of the Zen practitioner, I realized he was giving this advice to a 15-year-old. She had written saying she was trying to figure out what to do with her life. She would have been a sophomore in high school. She was quite stressed about choosing a career path, planning for college, expanding her interests. And as you apply for colleges, you have to have lots of things you've done, volunteer opportunities, clubs you belong to. And so she's in a panic about, how do I put all this together? I'm feeling incredibly stressed. So the Zen practitioner writes back, rather than focusing on the future, start focusing on the right now. Focus on what she could do that would be good for her regardless of what her future brings. The advice was, be creative. Make things with your hands. Go on adventures. Thoroughly enjoy your time with friends. Don't just be with friends and be on your phone. Thoroughly enjoy your time with friends. And instead of frittering away excessive time, so not all time, but excessive time on TV and video games and social media, the Zen practitioner said, that doesn't leave you anything tangible. Build something. Do a sketch every day, or create a blog. Update it regularly. Start a little business, like sell some cookies. And at the end of the year, there will be something to show for the time, something to look back on that's tangible. And this stuff will serve you in any future path. Also, make friends with discomfort. The Zen practitioner said, by stretching into the comfort zone, ironically, you'll become more comfortable with it, which is the best skill you can have in life. It will serve you anywhere. Also, that getting comfortable with discomfort prevents distraction and procrastination, because those are ways of just avoiding the discomfort. Think about what great advice that is for a student. And leaving it with, become trustworthy. And the advice was, you become trustworthy by doing your best at every task, by being honest, by admitting mistakes and fixing them, by being on time with commitments, and by being an emotionally generous person. Lastly, go grab opportunities that they come along. Take risks and be passionate. I loved that column, written to a 15-year-old, and I could really see, even at my age, how to apply that to my life. But I had so wished someone had given me that advice in my teens and my 20s. I pressed on for other sources of wisdom because somehow I still wasn't getting it. Lots of jumping in and out, still working on my bucket list. I had nothing written down, I'll be honest. But over time, I'd make a little note here and a little note there, and the frenzy kind of calmed down, and I started thinking about all of it being a patchwork quilt. I have the lovely work environment of being able to look up from my desk out onto a patchwork quilt. So I always think of all these ideas jumping around. They're starting to get stitched together with loving hands. Unfortunately, then I went to Google. And I ended up at the Claremont Purpose Scale and the Greater Good Berkeley Quiz. I can't explain, really. The authors of the Greater Good Berkeley Quiz will tell you it's about finding purpose. And so I thought, okay, if I know better what my purposes are, I can I don't know what I was thinking, more accurately create a bucket list. But it would lead somehow to better entries. So the Greater Good Project at Berkeley first tells you about what purpose is. Purpose is an abiding intention to achieve long-term goals that are both personally meaningful and perhaps make a positive mark on the world. The goals for my bucket list that foster a sense of purpose are actually ones that can potentially change the lives of other people, like supporting a mission, creating art for yourself, teaching kids to read, getting to know your neighbors. They also informed that research colleagues have found that adults who feel they have purpose have advantages, which include better cognitive functioning, lower stress levels, and longer, healthier lives. And apparently, you are also more likely to floss your teeth, to exercise, and to see the doctor for regular checkups. And because you're living a longer, healthier life, these are checkups. You are not seeing a specialist. My score indicated that I feel much purpose, but there was a little room to grow. So here's the advice I received from Berkeley, and I suspect it's rather generic. So don't feel slighted if you go there and your results come out similar, even though your score may be higher. Here's their advice. Discuss your goals with others. So, with your bucket list, find meaning in the items of your bucket list through discussing with others, and that helps you figure out how you intend to get there. I asked myself some questions. What is the most important to me in life right now? Do I need to deepen that or expand it? What are my greatest strengths? And am I using them to their best ends? When am I the most engaged? That's the really fun one. You're also supposed to imagine your future self, 10 or 20 or 40 years down the line. What is your life going to look like if you have lived it well? What possibilities did you create? So ask your future self, what are you doing? Or maybe, what are you doing? I read it both ways. They also asked you to take the Valued Living Questionnaire and the Personal Values Questionnaire, and I was like, I can tell this is an academic website, I gotta get out of here. And there's an easier way to do that. You can go to Brene Brown's website, and she has a great values questionnaire. And I noticed that my values had not changed over the last, from pre-pandemic to 4 years post-pandemic. I don't know what that means, but I'm certainly gonna ponder that over the next few weeks. So the greater good also wants you to cultivate positive emotions, specifically gratitude and awe, because it leads to all those good health outcomes, and it helps you find purpose. So I want you all to take home your pink piece of paper, your scribblings, your beginning ideas, and no matter what age you are, start working on that list of what you want to do. What do you want to manifest in a month, or 5 years, or 20 years, or 30 years? My last stop on the journey, well, thus far, my last stop on the journey, I'm sure there will be hundreds of last stops, was working with a poem called I Am Willing. It's one of those fill-in-the-blank poems where it says, I am willing, blank, I am willing, blank, I am willing. I have copies up here of what the inventor of the poem wrote down in their poem. So you can read her poem, you can savor it, you can think about it, but then I want you to scratch out her entries and put in your own. I do think it helps to have hers first because it kind of gets you inspired and going. And as one of our poets from earlier in the service, Kim Houlihan, says, your bucket list is going to get really long. So get going. Amen.